This was more than just a transaction. It was a fracture. A young, powerful, and unavoidable rising star in the Chicago sky abruptly shifted for a return that didn't equal the impact, the hoopla, or the resume. And when Angel Reese arrived, the headlines highlighted the Atlanta Dream's potential.
For Chicago, Reese burrows in for the finish of the foul. And now Reese has something to say to Smith.
However, the whispers revealed a different story because there were fissures beneath the headlines and highlights. Initially quiet, an eyebrow-raising suspension, disagreeing teammates, a feud with Caitlin Clark that blurred the distinction between controversy and competition. Then came the question that was impossible to ignore. What if talent had never been a factor? What if this applied to everything that goes along with it? Because a franchise's decision. Walking away from a player this valuable is more than simply a change of pace. It's a message. Trust the suspension. The trade announcement is frequently cited as the point at which Chicago decided to move on from Angel Reese.
Angel Reese trying to carry the Chicago Sky to victory.
The true fracture occurred months earlier, in September, with a half-game suspension that doesn't begin there. Though it hardly made the news at the time, it now seems like a cautionary tale that everyone ought to have paid more attention to. This is what transpired. Reese told reporters on camera during an interview with the Chicago Tribune that the Sky needed must go out and get outstanding players. She described it as non-negotiable.
Chicago took the first game 78-91, and then LA got their response with 97-86, says Angel Reese.
To be clear, she did not bring up the issue in a private meeting with the front office. She went straight to the media rather than bringing it up in a team meeting or calling a coach aside after practice. She effectively publicly informed the organization that she wasn't satisfied with the roster. You can concur with the statement. Chicago may have needed more skill, but there are differences between believing something and promoting it in a way that highlights your front office. Of the entire league, consider it from her teammates' point of view. You attend practice the next. When you unlock your phone in the morning, you notice your own teammate informing everyone that those in her immediate vicinity are not adequate. How do you feel about that? What impact does that have on the atmosphere in the gym that day? How does that alter the way you Would you mind passing the ball to her down the floor the next time? These are actual human repercussions from a single interview. Reese either didn't consider them or didn't care. In response, Chicago benched her for the first half of the game and attached, "I need you to comprehend something," 4 words to the decision that completely altered the squad. Regarding that expression,
she was suspended for half the game because of comments that she made and Angel were both talking about in those pressers.
That language, which is the documentation language and paper trail language, is not used lightly by organizations. When a front office is constructing a case, not responding to a terrible afternoon, they employ language like that. Unless the relationship is already broken, you don't suspend your own all-star over a single quote. The building's occupants were aware that it was beyond repair. This is the section that made even worse. When Reese was scheduled to return for the second half following the ban, let that sink in. According to sources, she declined to participate in the game. She was suspended for half a game, and rather than taking it on the chin, playing the second half, and advancing like a pro, she allegedly declined to participate. And she declined to play for the rest of the season. That is not a player who handled a disagreement with a decision poorly at the time. That player believed the organization was unworthy of her assistance. Chicago was done after that. The suspension wasn't the start of the issue. Chicago ceased acting as like the issue didn't exist at that point. Locker room aftermath. Now, if the suspension was the public turnaround point, the trade was unavoidable due to the private teammate problems, and there were 2 that stood above all the others. The first one concerns Courtney Vandersloot. If you don't pay much attention to the WNBA, to put it briefly, Vandersloot is a 5-time All-Star, a 2-time WNBA champion, and a 2-time All-WNBA first. Choosing a team.
Vandersloot all the way into the lane, got a round 1 defender, nobody else picked her up.
She played much of her career in Chicago, where she assisted the Sky in winning the 2021 title as an underdog that no one had predicted, saw coming, traveled to New York, and won another ring with the Liberty. Following all of that at the age of 36, she left a championship-caliber situation to return to a rebuilding city, but she did not have to. Perhaps because she supported what the Sky was attempting to create. That choice reveals everything. Praised Vandersloot's character as a teammate and competitor. Then, on June 7th, 7 games into the 2025, Vandersloot suffered an ACL tear against the Indiana Fever throughout the season. Now that the season is over, any functioning locker. What follows is straightforward, Sutterum. You support the wounded veteran and maintain civility in public. The unwritten rule is to let the basketball speak when the time comes. Angel Reese disregarded this. Reese stated publicly in an interview with the Chicago Tribune on September 3rd that the team could not rely on Courtney to return at her age. She stated that they wanted a younger, experienced somebody who was prepared to fight for a title. Now imagine what that sounds like to a 36-year-old lady recovering from an ACL tear at home. A player that has already won 2 rings, demonstrated her ability to compete at the top level, and choose your team over maintaining a winning position. That is not helpful criticism. Rather, it is a teammate informing the basketball community heard it clearly. World, you are finished. Vandersloot publicly responded, a few days later, claiming that her age had no bearing whatsoever and that she would return stronger than ever. She didn't specifically name Reese, but it wasn't necessary because everyone knew who she was referring to. Vandersloot was reportedly the most disgruntled player on the team behind closed doors. The two were thought to have irreparably ruined their relationship, and Chicago's front office even admitted that if Reese was going to stay, healing that rift would be one of the most important things. Then there was Camila Cardoso. To be honest, she was not going to stay on the roster. Given that Cardoso was not a faraway veteran on the other end, this one may be even more illuminating of the team. Perhaps she was Reese's frontcourt mate, with whom she shared the paint in every game.
Well, they picked her off pretty good, though, trying to get around that screen here. Cardoso picks it off with her first swat.
Cardoso was drafted at number 3 and Reese at number 7 in the same 2024 class, and the idea was that Chicago's future would have been built on 2. However, the partnership never succeeded. In terms of statistics, in 2025, the Cardoso-Reese pair had the lowest defensive rating of any 2-big combination in the league. Chicago shot a pitiful 28% when both were on the court after placing second worst the previous year. Because neither player could stretch the defense from 3, there was little spacing, which led to a jammed paint that made any guard on the team's life more difficult. However, the issues went beyond basketball fit. According to several people within the building, Cardoso had cut ties with Reese. That their relationship had become so tense that the energy was being impacted of the entire squad. Here's the thing that sticks in my memory. A video from a match against New York shows Cardoso clearly left her own team's huddle as if she had already mentally checked out, visibly floating toward the Liberty bench. Departed the building. Although it was made fun of online, consider what it truly takes to push your own frontcourt partner until that point. That is a trend that has accompanied Reese from every stop in her life. It is not a personality conflict. Career, from Maryland to LSU to the professional level. Eventually, when the same conflict appears, the Clark rivalry ceases to be the universal denominator in every locker room you enter. Without mentioning Caitlin Clark, a discussion of Angel Reese in the WNBA would be incomplete. I'm not here to reiterate what counts for this story are the rivalries between colleges, the fights on social media, or the commotion on draft night. The on-court events in 2024 and 2025 that garnered league-wide notice and increased the disparity between what Reese stated in public what the video actually revealed. The league flagged several plays throughout those 2 seasons. Additionally, Reese's public account of events consistently differed with what was seen on the replays. The gap between her narrative and reality kept getting wider and more obvious, and people inside the league started observing the pattern more closely. Although there is a distinction between playing physically and playing carelessly, additionally, there is a greater distinction between acting carelessly and then acting as though it never happened. The public had receipts even after Reese's version of events was untrue because the video remained online indefinitely, attempted to change the narrative. Reese became involved with Clark during the 2025 season opening versus Indiana. It is not unusual for both players to receive opposing technical fouls. Physical play does occur.
Angel Reese wide open. You knew that Caitlin Clark was going to come in and take that foul.
It's common for rivalry games to cause intense emotions, but Reese's actions following the game were abnormal. Her own teammates were allegedly completely taken aback by her public framing of the entire affair as prejudice. Guard because the framing did not reflect what they saw on the floor, and no one on that roster had anticipated her being there. A video shows Reese yanking Clark's jersey, going far beyond what the play required for in terms of physical contact. And the expressions on the players' faces around her conveyed a tale in and of themselves. Her teammates were in disbelief, not because the altercation took place, but rather because of Reese's subsequent choices regarding the story. Here's the human aspect of this that, in my opinion, is overlooked. Look, I recognize the discussions around racism and equity in women's sports are real, significant, and worthy of real attention. These are not unimportant subjects, and they shouldn't be written off. However, when you employ that framing while your teammates are glancing at one another, you are not initiating a dialogue because they disagree with your account of what transpired. You're destroying credibility, and what happened in Chicago's locker room is said to have burnt a lot of it. This is because when you play that card, the folks who are standing next to you do not support it. The trust breaks down in a way that is extremely difficult to mend. Here is what people do not talk about enough. As of 2026, the WNBA's biggest narrative is the Clark-Reese rivalry. It fills venues on both sides, generates ratings, and sells tickets, but there is a distinction between a rivalry that improves both players and one in which only one side continues to improve. Additionally, inside the league, Reese was the one who continued to pour gasoline, and it was beginning to splash. The whisper had turned into a full-volume discourse. Fit above talent. So by the time the late-season absences began to mount and Chicago's front staff had already psychologically moved on when Reese started blaming a back injury, and the timing of those absences was strange enough that fans and reporters noticed it because the games she missed coincided with nearly precisely with the sections of the building where internal accountability discussions take place, were allegedly at their loudest. Then the videos appeared. Reese was traveling to Las Vegas on a private jet. While allegedly too hurt to play for her squad, she was twerking and having a blast. That did not exactly help sell the story of back injuries. To be fair, injuries are difficult, and back injuries in particular can flare up. Optics are important, though, especially when your team is fighting for position and your back is purportedly too injured to play, yet she appears to be having your finest life in private on social media. Jet is the type of device that amplifies murmurs in a locker room. It doesn't matter if the injury